Here come the drums. Welcome to the Mark Peterson Show, where I give you news and views from a Blackish point of view. The title of today's show is Ahmaud-Arbery and American Social Media Justice. By now, most of you have heard of the case involving Ahmaud-Arbery, a young 26-year-old black man who was killed after he jogged through a suburban neighborhood. He was killed by the father-son duo of Gregory McMichael and Travis McMichael. Gregory, the father, 64, and Travis McMichael, 34, saw Arbery jogging through the neighborhood and thought they recognized him as someone who had just entered a construction site. They immediately linked him to a string of burglaries that had taken place in the neighborhood, and they thought, why not take justice into their own hands? The McMichaels allegedly chased down Arbery in a pickup truck and confronted him. The father and son became embroiled in a battle with Arbery, and shots were fired, leaving Arbery dead. And that's where the case stood until May 7th. You see, no arrests were made after the murder. The case just stood open until May 7th, when a video, which was recorded by William Rhodey Bryant, was turned over to police. The 36-second video showed Amaud being chased and then shot to death by the father-son team of Gregory McMichael and Travis McMichael. That video was released more than 60 days after the murder. And it was that video that prompted a viral reaction that stimulated protest, social media reaction from communities all the way up to stars like Jay-Z and Alicia Keys. And then that finally led to an arrest 2 days after the release of the video on May 9th. Since their arrest, it has been made known that the McMichaels allegedly worked for the Brunswick Judicial Circuit Court District Attorney's Office, and they also had apparently investigated Arbery for a past infraction. You may be able to tell from my tone that I am extremely disappointed with these events. But there are some nuances here that we just have to point out. Everybody points out the fact that it took more than 60 days for there to be an arrest after a dead body showed up at the morgue. The dead body of Ahmaud-Arbery. But the thing that's most disappointing to me is that it took a social media campaign to prompt the arrest. And what that also tells me is that since 1964, nothing has really changed when it comes to black people and change in America. When Dr. King and John Lewis and others marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, if the cameras were not there to witness the fractured skulls, the broken arms, the fire hoses, the dogs, the maiming, it would have been like the tree fell in the forest and no one being there, so it didn't fall. What we're witnessing is, and what we continue to witness, is that American social media justice is required for blacks, particularly black males, to get justice in this country. When I say justice, I don't always mean a victory. To get the wheels of the legal process turning is probably a more suitable way to put it. Because in the case of Arbery, we just have an arrest. We don't have a conviction. We don't have a sentence for the father-son team. And when you have a more than 60-day period between the murder and the arrest, the facts and evidence can be manipulated in a way that it makes it very hard for the estate of Arbery to get a fair trial. But before we even get to the trial, again, Social media justice is what blacks have depended upon in order to get the wheels of justice turning in our favor. Let me take you back to April 4th, 2015 in North Charleston, South Carolina, when Walter Scott began to run away from a police officer after a routine traffic stop, and it was recorded the officer shooting him in the back more than 4 times. Had there not been video of that incident, Walter Scott would have never gotten the opportunity to have a day in court. The video, just like in the case of Ahmaud-Arbery, created a social media storm. It put to the forefront the types of problems that are faced by blacks in communities where there's not the type of community policing that we expect. Without that social media pressure, that Walter Scott case would have just been swept under the rug. And that's the bigger crime, that you need that sort of evidence and the galvanization of support behind the video in order for local officials to do their jobs. Every day around the country, black, white, Native American, Latino, men and women suffer atrocities, and it's not caught on tape, and justice is not served. We can't allow ourselves to continue to depend on social media justice to get justice. Because if we do, we're going to replace our lawyers with social media experts whose job it will become to make sure that anytime a video clip of this sort is captured, that there's a viral campaign that is stimulated around the country in order to get some sort of reaction from the court system. That's what it's turning into. That you don't no longer need organizations like the NAACP, which used to bring out lawyers like Thurgood Marshall to help fight the legal cases that were being brought against black men and women. No, we need a National Association of Social Media Experts for Justice to replace the NAACP. If we are going to just forfeit the fact that we should be getting justice anyway. If we're going to forfeit it, then we need to recreate the organizations that we have and get them focused on the tools that are needed to make sure justice is served in every community. Why am I pushing so hard? Because the video doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the conviction. If the court system is not valuing the life of a minority. Take the case of E.J. Bradford Jr., a 21-year-old black male who was killed in Hoover, Alabama, after the police officer thought he was the shooter in the mall. He was not the shooter. The officer mistaked him for the shooter, and he is no longer alive. There was video of that incident, but no audio was released. Of course, there was audio captured by the Hoover Mall cameras, but releasing that audio would have proved whether or not the officer actually shouted for people to freeze and to put down any weapons they may have, which would have tipped the balance in the outcome of that case. So video isn't always the answer. There was a trial in the case of E.J. Bradford, but the officer was found innocent. Here's why I think social media justice, American social media justice, will eventually not serve the black community well. It's called deplatforming. If you don't know what that is, just look up Alex Jones. Someone who is very controversial, says things that are completely off the script for anyone in America. But because this is America, he has the First Amendment rights to say it. But according to many social media platforms, he can't say it on those platforms. And so they have deplatformed him and taken away his voice. The same has been done for Louis Farrakhan and others that they deem controversial. If you dig a little deeper, anyone that has complained about racism has found themselves in the penalty box on many of the social media platforms. So what is that saying about the future of American social media justice? That if these incidents continue to be caught and they continue to galvanize national or international support for justice, the algorithms will find a way to make sure they never get the traction you need. See, these strategies have played out time and time again, and we keep falling for the same trap. In Dr. King's day, television and black media became the way to make sure that stories went viral. So what did they do? Buy up black media, buy up black journalists, shut those entities down, and eliminate the methods for us to share the truth. They don't have to do that today. They just deplatform you, and justice is no longer served. So what's the answer? Well, our forefathers had the answer when they owned their own newspapers, their own means to communicate and share facts and figures with individuals in the community. And we're going to have to re-embrace that and build the next generation of community platforms so that you can continue to get the truth out there when platforms that we use today begin to deplatform you or minimize your message. Yeah, they ghost you. And when that happens, we have to have other tools for making sure that the message is distributed to individuals who care about justice. So young entrepreneurs, there are opportunities for you to reemerge and build these platforms, to take on these giants, and to truly provide ways for people to share the truth. The second thing we have to do is we have to make it costly for taking human life. One thing I liked about the Southern Poverty Law Center was that they would go after the Ku Klux Klan with lawsuits and make the individuals pay personally whenever they committed crimes. They bankrupted many of these organizations using that tactic. I don't see that tactic being used in the cases like Walter Scott, in the cases like E.J. Bradford and others. We have to go personally after the people who committed the crimes and make it expensive to take a human life. I'm not going to go in the other direction and say there needs to be more surveillance. I want there to be less surveillance. I want there to be less video. The more you welcome that kind of stuff into your life, the more freedoms you lose. You got to make it expensive to take a human life. And so that means that we have to make the investments in institutions that can help fight those types of battles. And the third and final thing we have to do is that we have to take control of our communities. There are too many young black men and women who are walking the streets and have no hope on their face. There are too many that are suffering from mental ailments with nowhere to get any sort of support. There are too many who are walking the streets and don't know that they can make their own jobs. They're looking for others to create opportunities when opportunities are right there in front of them. They just haven't been given the insights on how to create them. I'm going to have a young man on the podcast in a few weeks, and he started out with nothing and decided that he was going to make a job. Started out as a maintenance man, expanded to be a maintenance man at another facility, saved his money and started selling used cars, turned that into a business, He then bought into a senior living community where he owns part of it and also provides the maintenance for that community. So he started out with the view of, I can make a job and create a plan and grow wealth. And we want to start teaching young black men and women that that is something that they can do. Wealth build instead of wealth transfer from your pocket to the pockets of corporations that don't care about any of the communities. Black, white, Latino, Asian, they don't care about any of them. They care about the bottom line. And those are the tools that we need to start teaching so that young men and women are valued for what they can contribute and not seen as potential threats. That paradigm has to change. Enough of my sermon. I hear the drums. I appreciate you listening, and I hope I got through to you about how horrific this crime was, but more importantly, the levers that had to be pulled in order to get the attention. It was extraordinary, and it shouldn't have been. We don't need a social media landslide when justice should have been served 2 days after the murder. That's a crime in and of itself. Let's address that too and make this world a better place. Till next time, guys. Peace.
Hey you, podcast listener. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Take the blue pill. You wake up in your bed and go back to listening to mundane podcasts that won't challenge your religious beliefs and your so-called truths about reality, the universe, and consciousness. Take the red pill. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast, hosted by Mark Anthony Peterson, and he will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Event Horizon takes a walk into the paranormal with a splash of conspiracy. It's the podcast that would be born if David Icke and the X-Files had a baby. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast by Mark Anthony Peterson on Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Remember, all we are offering is the truth, nothing more.